Well, in this video, I'm going to talk about the core shamanism and the three components that are necessary for you to have a successful journey. For you to really experience what it was like and what it is like for shamanic cultures to utilize this practice. As you may or may not know, the last 30 years I've been exploring how musical rhythm impacts the brain and behavior. And part of my original research was into core shamanism, traditional shamanic techniques, and how it relates to altering consciousness, how you can drive the brain through the rhythms of the drumming. And I'll talk a bit about that today, but I'll also talk about some other core components that are just as important for a shamanic experience. They're not as important if you simply just want an altered consciousness, if you want an out-of-body experience or just be in some sort of a trance state. You don't have to have all these components, but if you want to do a shamanic experience, have a shamanic experience, you need to have all three of these. So, what are they? Well, the first one is obviously the altered state of consciousness, and that's really driven by the drum. That's all about getting your brain into an internally directed state called theta. Theta is a state of consciousness where we are less aware of our outer world and more aware of our inner experience. In other words, we have the ability at this point to see the world in a very different way. And this is what the shamans utilize in order to have the impact that they're having on the world. So the drumming tempo is what you're looking at. You're looking at how the specific pulse gets your brain to shift into that same tempo. That's called brainwave entrainment. I talk a lot about brainwave entrainment, and I talk about it from a lot of different perspectives. But from a shamanic perspective, what we're talking about is 4 beats per second. And 4 beats per second is the low end of theta, the very upper end of the unconscious state, delta. And in this state, you're most distanced from your outer world as you can possibly be and still have some brain activity. So you're open to experience, you're open to seeing the world in a very different way. In traditional shamanic cultures, this is about being able to kind of traverse this unseen world where metaphor takes over, where you can influence the physical world through imagery of this other world. Which leads us to the second component of core shamanism that you must have in order to have a shamanic journey, and that is a focused visualization. You have to be able to navigate this altered state of consciousness with imagery that allows you to either see what's going on with somebody or influence what's happening with somebody or something. Traditional shamanic cultures kind of run the gamut, but there are two things that you're doing. You're either restoring someone's energy, or you're getting rid of an unwanted energy that might be in someone's space. Those are the two things that are going to happen with most shamanic journeys. The third thing that could happen is you're simply just observing what's going on so that you can come back into the regular world and kind of report at what you're seeing. So when I started looking at the traditions back in the late 80s, the research back then was really looking at the cultural aspects of what shamanism was all about, and really looking at these visualizations, the journey itself, what they meant, what they were all about, how to have them, how to influence them, and nothing about the drumming and the altered state of consciousness. Of course, at the time I was most interested in what was going on with the drumming, and so I put this imagery stuff aside and I said, well, that's all well and good, but I'm more interested in what's happening neurologically with the brain. What is this altered state of consciousness? Does brainwave entrainment really exist, and why? And how can you influence that? And I do a lot of videos on that. I've got another video coming up soon where I talk about how we can really optimize that aspect of our brains today to be able to have the kind of journeys we want to have. But for today, we're going to take a look at this visualization component. This idea that you can use mental imagery to influence your world, that you can have a positive impact by manipulating that mental imagery. So from the earliest point of shamanism, and the simplest way of looking at it, if you're going on your first shamanic journey, for instance, you're going to be a very passive participant in it. You're going to go in and you're going to have a journey that's going to be centered, for instance, maybe on connecting with a spirit helper. And you're going to go in with the intention of connecting with a spirit helper And that process is going to unfold before you without your control at all. You're just going to be a passenger along this process. But as you get deeper into shamanism and the power of the imagery, you're going to start looking at how you can manipulate that imagery with your own force of will, with your own skills in this world. And that's where the true shamanic power comes in, is the ability to direct what's going on in these images, in this visualization, more so than just being a traveler. And the third core component of shamanism is ceremonial intent. In other words, you need to have a mindset going in of what you want to accomplish. So it's very rare that somebody doing a shamanic journey is just going to go in and say, well, I'm just going to experience an altered state of consciousness, lucid dreaming, whatever. Every journey that a shamanic practitioner will go on has a very specific intent. And the clearer your intent going in, the more effective your journey is going to be. Because number one, you've gone in with a certain mindset in mind, but also now if you develop the skills to be able to manipulate the imagery, now you have ability to further direct what you're doing because you know what you're trying to accomplish. So it's no longer about going in and doing a journey, for instance, and connecting with the spirit helper and saying, well, what do you hear from me to help me with? Instead, you're going in and you're maybe connecting with a spirit helper that you dictate, I need help with this. I need your assistance in being able to help this person access their intuition, their personal power, something like that. Ceremonial intent goes beyond that, though, and this is something that really captivated me from the get-go. When you start looking at brainwave entrainment and you start looking at how to alter consciousness, one of the first things you realize is that some people are more susceptible to this altered state than others. And many of us today can't get there. We try, we meditate, our minds are going a mile a minute. We do a shamanic journey and we can't not focus on the drumming. Instead, we're just hearing the beating of the drum and we're not really finding ourselves disengaging enough from the outer world to be able to allow our brains to shift. The key to this is really the ceremonial intent. In other words, what we need to do is we need to create an environment, a ceremonial, sacred environment that allows our nervous system to change. Our brains want to stay doing what they're doing. And what they're doing for most of us is beta activity that's chaotic. We're basically living our lives in response to the stimulus that comes at us. And if we're not directly in response to it, we're triggering ourselves all day long with a little dopamine drip by going to our devices and looking for a little bit of novelty. We're always looking for a little jolt of something unique to get us re-engaged. That is keeping the beta activity in our brains. It's keeping this chaotic state of response. We're always in reaction to what comes at us. And in doing so, we can't then surrender and our brains won't shift from beta to theta. We need to create an environment that allows our brains to slow down and synchronize in order to get us into this altered state of consciousness. It doesn't happen instantaneously. It is a process. And so part of ceremonial intent is doing what's called breaking homeostasis. Homeostasis is that chaotic beta frequency that we're in throughout our day, that we're just in reaction and response to what's going on with our sensory system. Instead, we're stepping away from that and we're deciding with intent that we're going to change our brains. We're going to change our state. Easiest way to do that is to sit down, close your eyes, breathe in through your nose, hold it briefly, breathe out through your mouth at twice the amount of time. So if you breathe in 2 beats, pause for 1 beat and breathe out for 4. As you're doing this, focus on the breath and then focus a little bit on how you're sitting. Get comfortable. Check in with your shoulders. See where you're carrying tension in your back. Where do you have pain in your body? Just by taking a moment to focus on your breath and to check in with how your body is feeling, you've automatically gotten yourself out of beta, this reactive state of beta, and you've brought yourself into an alpha state. And it could take some time. You're going to find yourself getting monkey mind. You're going to be thinking about what you need to do later on. You're going to stress about something that happened. You're going to worry about something that may or may not happen. You're going to think about picking up your phone. Stay with the breath. Focus on how your shoulders feel, your back feels, your seat feels. just get into your body and breathe, you'll notice that your brain waves will slow down, they'll synchronize to alpha. Now, when you introduce the stimulus for the shamanic journey, all of a sudden you become receptive. Your brain is somewhat synchronized, and now you can get in. When I talk to people who are taking any of my courses, especially the drum healing course, where we introduce people to shamanism who don't really have an interest necessarily, these are people who are interested in using kind of drumming to enhance their state of well-being. And we cover a whole bunch of different techniques. One of them is meditation, but the first time people get into this, it's the very beginning of the course, I get emails from people saying, I don't feel anything. I'm not getting into this state. And I have to say, listen, first you need to work on you got to break homeostasis. You got to get out of beta, start slowing your brain down, and then surrender into it. And then as you surrender into it, you will start experiencing a true shamanic state of consciousness. So these three components are necessary for you to be able to have a successful journey. First of all, you need to break homeostasis. You need to set up a ceremonial intent, a sacred space that first helps your brain slow down and go from a place of reaction to centeredness, to synchronization, so that you can then become part of that altered state. You also need to have the ability to visualize what it is that you want, to be able to follow a path in this world that takes you on a positive journey. And then you need the support of the driving percussion in order to do this. Now, 90% of shamanic cultures around the world use the percussion instruments to get us into this altered state of consciousness. Roughly 10% use some sort of psychedelic drug, peyote, ayahuasca, something along those lines, that does roughly the same thing as the drumming does. The advantage with the drumming is, number one, it's legal. Number two, you have complete control over when you go in and when you come out. When you take a chemical substance to have the journey, you don't have the same amount of control, and therefore, a lot of people suggest that from a purely shamanic perspective, where the goal is to really work the journeys, to be able to manipulate your imagery, to have the positive impact in the regular world, you need to have control. You can't be in a place where you're just floating. And that's what the drugs can tend to do. They're great for getting an out-of-body experience, lucid dreaming, having some mystical, undefined experience where you're kind of oneness with God, but it's not really that great for being able to direct your imagery to have a positive impact on the world. And that's what core shamanism is all about, which is why most cultures end up using percussion, because it'll allow you to get these states and have control and have enough awareness to be able to work these images the way you want to work them. So, but the argument against the drum is that, well, I don't feel much. The drumming is happening and I'm so conscious of it. I feel like I'm still aware of the regular world. I'm focusing on the drumming and the rhythm and it's annoying me, and oh, my foot hurts and my back is and I got an itch, and all these things that go on to us with us when we are not quite there yet, and so we feel like we can't get there. You will get there over time. Shamanic journeying and entrainment is a learned response. Your brain learns how to do this. Research shows that it takes anywhere from 12 to 17 minutes the first time you encounter this repetitive percussion in order to bring your brain into that state. 12 to 17 minutes is an eternity when you're sitting and you're squirming in your seat. Most people don't get that far, and so they give up. And that first time may take 12 to 17 minutes, or maybe you don't even get there because you're too squirrely and you can't sit still. The second time isn't going to be much less because you were squirrely the first time. And so it may take 10, 15 times before you start feeling that transition. And then you may not even feel it every time you do it. I've been doing shamanic journeying for a little over 30 years now, and not every time do I get that deep. There are times when I'm just not. It feels really intellectual. It feels really rote. I'm going through and I'm following this path and I'm doing this thing, and it doesn't really feel very special. It just feels like the regular world. That's okay. That happens. But if you have the ability to break homeostasis by creating a sacred space and having the intent of being able to have this journey, you work the visualizations, and you follow the path, whether you're a passive volunteer through it and you're just going along and you're meeting a power animal today or an ancestor another day and you're just letting that unfold for you, or if you're really directing that to have a specific therapeutic purpose, you still have to have the intent of that visualization meaning something. It has to matter. And then you have the drumming that's going to help you, the percussion that's going to help you get into this state. You will more often than not over time develop a really strong ability to have these deep journeys, to have these meaningful experiences, to be able to impact your world in a meaningful way. But without these three, you may just have a nice meditation. So you just do the percussion, for instance. You don't sit down and actively set an intent and go on a visual quest. Instead, you just let the percussion kind of carry you along. You breathe a little bit, you focus on your breath, and you just let yourself be carried away. That can be really cool. That is not a shamanic experience, that's a trance experience. It doesn't make it any less than, it's just different than. So if you're looking for a real shamanic experience, set your intention, create a sacred space, sit and breathe, get connected to your body so that you can get out of beta. Set a visualization, an intent for your visualization. Work that visualization, take control of it, and allow the percussion to do its job. That's what I'm going to share this time around. I will play for you a little bit. We'll do a little bit of a shamanic journey and we'll kind of set you up for this. So at this point, I'd love you to put your feet on the floor. I do this a little differently than I was taught in my traditional shamanic courses. When I first studied shamanism, and most people who take courses on core shamanism will, they'll be asked to lay down, they'll put a cloth over their face, really black out their world and just kind of allow themselves to almost be prepared to go to sleep. And that's okay, you can do that if you'd like. I like to be a little bit more kind of active in it. So I like people to sit down, or if you're laying down, bring your knees up, get your feet flat on the floor. I like to do a hybrid technique that I learned from one of my teachers where I'm actively connecting to the energy of the earth. So from here, just put your feet on the floor and allow yourself to close your eyes and take a breath in. Breathe through your nose, breathe in for about 2 beats. Hold that breath for about a beat. And then breathe out your mouth for about 4 beats. I'll take another breath. And as you do, just check in with your body. Reposition your spine. See how you're feeling. Are your shoulders knotted up? Does your back hurt? Do you have any pain anywhere? Just notice. Try to relax if you can. Just relax your muscles. Try to get comfortable. Take another breath. And then when you're ready, just imagine cords or roots going down from the center of your feet down to the center of the earth. Just no effort, no thought, nothing is in the way. Just imagine connecting down to the earth's energy. Let it ground you. Let it bring you here. Let it make you present. And then allow that energy to come up those roots or cords, up through your feet, past your knees, your hips, and into your solar plexus. And then let it run through your body and back down to the earth. What you're doing is you're connecting yourself to the ground. You're becoming present here and now. Okay, we've broken homeostasis. I guarantee at this point, if you've done this, your brain is now settling out of beta. You've forgotten about your phone. You're not looking for a hit of novelty. You're here now, you're focusing on your breath, your body. Just keep breathing. Now, this one we're just going to do an alternate of a traditional journey. I'm not going to have you go anywhere in particular. I want to ask for you to ask a question. So as I'm going to play, I'd like for you to just ask yourself, what does my body need? Simple question. You can go wherever you want to go visually, but you're going to be more of a passive passenger in this process. You may go somewhere, you may see some images, or you may simply get an answer in your head. You may find yourself focusing on a part of your body or not, or taking a look at your diet or your exercise or whatever. But what you're looking for here is just, what does my body need right now? And the idea here is I'm trying to help you determine where you might be neglecting yourself. because we tend to go through our days in reaction. We tend to not really pay attention to what it is we need. So this just give you a moment to just check in with yourself and see what your body needs. I'm going to play for a little bit. As I play, you're going to find yourself focusing on the rhythm, and then hopefully eventually you're going to start not really hearing it. That's what we're going for. Just keep asking yourself over and over again, what does my body need? And I'll play for a few minutes, 4 beats per second, which is pretty quick. And then before I end, I'm going to go half tempo for 8 beats. So half as fast for 8 beats. And then I will go to the regular tempo again for about 30 seconds, just to give you a chance to, come back. Here we go.